Welcome to Channel Edge, the podcast where channel leaders share success strategies, best practices, and emerging trends. Brought to you by 360 Insights, the channel success platform.
Hey, welcome everyone to another episode of Channel Edge, 360 Insights Moving to Everything channel. I'm your host, Stephen Kellum. Want to welcome everybody for joining us today. Today, we're going to dig in the practical direction, or go in the practical direction. We've had so many strategic conversations over the past 2 years, from digital transformation to ecosystem orchestration, and really gone deep in a lot of the big trends that are happening in the channel. However, since we seem to have transformed to the new normal, well, I think most people have transformed to the new normal pretty well. I do believe it makes sense to spend some time at the ground level in the practical conversations. Many of our listeners are asking us straightforward questions. What works? How do I make this channel thing successful? Really getting into the nuts and bolts of how to make things work. Of course, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but in the end, how you boy, I'm going to kill this word. How you make everything boy, I'm glad we can edit this. Is that even a word?
Programmatic, programatize. Yeah. That's why you brought an expert on to help you pronounce these big words that may not even be words.
Okay, look, normally I would say we're going to cut that whole thing out, but we're going to leave that in. Joining us to talk about that big word is Darren Bibby, former VP of Partner Strategy and Programs at DocuSign. Darren, welcome. And thank you for
Stephen. Yeah.
My mispronunciation of a word that doesn't actually exist.
Exactly.
So Darren, welcome. And we're going to dig into scaling partner programs. And that's really important for so many people in the growth side and the pragmatic side of how do you make that work? How do you successfully grow and manage your channel revenue, partner community, and even internal headcount as you expand? So it seems that really, Darren, that I think that's strategy. I know we're talking practical and pragmatic, but I think strategy is a big piece on how to pull that all together.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, what we've got here is I've got a list of sort of, hindsight's 2020. These were the 5 kind of categories of big things that we did to bring sort of order from chaos. And when I joined DocuSign, it was a little chaotic in 2016. There was partners were exciting. We were, there was progress being made, but there was tons of one-off deals. There was tons of loosey-goosey alliances, relationships. This partner got this deal. This partner got another percentage. This partner was getting, and so what we needed to do to scale, because DocuSign was already a market leader in e-signature, but, the growth was, imminent, and, COVID certainly sped that up as we can't see each other all the time. But we needed to make it scale. And so I guess a couple key themes from chaos to order, scaling, programmatizing everything. Those are kind of a few themes of sort of what I'd say in summary I tried to do over the last 5 years at DocuSign.
And the good thing for our listeners today is not only can you talk about this because you've lived through it, right? And you've seen it, you've lived through it, you've done it, but you've also created a list. And one of the coolest things about a podcast or a webcast, when you take away the strategy and the ideas behind it, but if there's actually a list that you can walk through and you can document how you've gone through this, I think that's a great way to.
I think people like lists. I remember being at a presentation once, and I was sort of, single speaker in a chair, talking about their experiences, and then, people were okay into it, but then she said, "But I've got 5 things and they all perked up, got ready to write it down."
Oh, you can write it down.
Then she got into the first one and then forgot to go through 2, 3, 4, and 5, and just sort of lost the audience again.
Look, I've done 100 podcasts, right? And if you can do a list, follow through on the list, because people, I think it's human nature. I know it is for me. When someone, you can get into a comfort zone on something like that, and you go, okay, wait, I can listen to the strategic message, but if I have a list, there's my takeaways, right?
Exactly.
That's good. So let's jump into that list, right? The number one thing on that list was the word that I wasn't sure was a word, right? Programmatize everything, right? And I love this as a starting point. At 360, we live in the automation world, and often automation is going before programs. And maybe they could even go at the same time, but Darren, we have conversations all the time with people who want to automate and they think it's going to solve the world, but they haven't got their programs
That's right.
Programmatized everything yet.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So for us, visually or metaphorically, I like to think of it as like we had roads, but they were like these, medieval roads, these, middle of nowhere roads. They were bumpy, they were rocky. There was no rules of the road. We needed to make highways. We needed to make enough capacity for everyone to drive on those roads. We needed to have speed limits. We needed to have rules. We needed to have all of that kind of stuff. So my group, my job was to be responsible to have a good infrastructure to work with all our partners. And we had, by the way, just for a little bit of context, we had independent software vendors who wanted to put e-signature into their application. It was just such a great go-to-market for DocuSign and to get us to new business cases. And quite a few flavors of that. But to keep it simple, ISVs, we had resellers. And that was growing and growing. But, again, when I came on, it was funny. We did a little bit of an inventory of all of the existing contracts with resellers, and they were kind of all over the map. And that's actually sort of illegal. Like it's the Robinson-Patman Act basically says you've got to treat like partners alike. And we kind of weren't at the time. So that had to get cleaned up. And the third category was the services companies. And that grew and grew over the last few years as DocuSign got into more complex things. I should probably also just for context, you might have this elsewhere, but I'm no longer with DocuSign. I retired from there, taking what is going to hopefully be a very long break, but I'll do some kind of consulting in that on the side. So just wanted to say I'm not there. I'm not representing DocuSign now. I wanted to tell my story of these 5 things and, how we built up the program, how we brought order from chaos. And the first thing, as you said, was programmatize everything. What we found was there was just, one-off deals. We had lots of deals that weren't written down. The ones that were written down were, not great. And then you had a whole bunch that were verbal agreements, or it was in an email. You just can't have that. Some people try to live off, Richard over in a partner operations says we do this, right? So it was difficult. And I would love to say these all happened 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but over time, we just realized we've got to start coming up with a program for everything. We can't have one-off deals. We've got to have those rules of the road to get through. So that was kind of basically the first realization that if ever a request came in and it was a one-off, it's like, okay, could this be a program or initiative? Or do I have to say no? Or, we just deal with it this one time. So there was a lot of that because at the beginning was just everything was a one-off. Couldn't survive that way.
And that is logical. And that is the way to scale. It's not always as easy as it sounds because, some people like being cowboys and cowgirls and they like the, putting out fires and being special, and partners are that way for sure. Right. So I know this sounds like a first logical step, but I don't think it's all that easy, really.
A lot of those cowboys just love to be able to say yes because there was nothing really telling them they couldn't say yes. So they were saying yes to things and people were scrambling to make it happen. And just, it wasn't a good way to work. So having that mindset that everything had to be a program or initiative. And I'll tell you, as someone who ran a programs team and ran that partner strategy, if someone came to our team with a request and we could hand over a document, we could hand over like, this is what we do for your thing. It was like a little bit of heaven. It was a little bit of like, that feels great because we programmatized that thing. Yeah. And now we have an automatic response. And again, over time, you're going to get that question hundreds of times. You need one answer, not let me go check and make it up as we go. So
no question about it. And I think that leads, I think that leads into your second one is document everything. So if you're going to hand that over, you need to get all that information out of everyone's head and into a secure place that you can then distribute it and scale with it, right?
Yeah, the lesson here is don't do nothing because you can't do everything, right? Like pretty good, even okay is sometimes good enough to get started. So what I would say is just have an impetus to get stuff written down, right? So we were using, different tools and the like, but and we had 3 types of documents. Let's start there. Of course, there's all the legal types of documents, but the ones we were more in control of as a programs department, we had the program guides for the actual partners. right? So that had to be a little bit more published with some formality. We did that every quarter. I actually instituted quarterly updates. Even if there wasn't anything to update, we had a new date on it.
Okay.
Because we were growing so much, we were figuring things out. We needed that short amount of time to make changes. Like we couldn't, like otherwise you're rushing to like publish by January 1st. You're like, oh, I really wanted to get in that new extra incentive about such and such, but you're like, oh, we missed the deadline. Like you can't have that be another year, right? 6 months is even too long. So it allowed us to iterate. And again, I'd say, so 1 was program guides, 2 was field guides, right? So for all our PAMs, partner account managers, our sellers, we had to point them to something to say, here's how you work with the partners. Here's the rules. Here's how you do it. Here are the resources. And then 3rd was the kind of operational guide. Like, let's write down how we do it. We know Bob over there knows how to do this, but what if Bob wins the lottery, gets hit by a bus, right? We got to just write it down. And so where I was going to start there with those 3 document types, it's daunting at the beginning to say, oh God, we need program guides for all the different kinds of programs, all the different partner types. We need field guides for that. Just start writing it down. Maybe it doesn't get published for a few months, right? Maybe the internal one doesn't even go anywhere for a while. Start writing it down. Maybe you can then share it with a few closer people to say, hey, does this make sense? You make your favorite partner account manager, favorite seller, go through it with them, but just get it started, because after a while, then it becomes urgent and you're like, hey, I already got it 80% done. So there was just an impetus, because a lot of people don't want to get into it because it just seems daunting. Just get started. Just start writing stuff down.
I do have a question for you about the guidelines, because partners like consistency and they don't like surprises, and they want to stay in the only thing so changes sometimes can be.
Oh, you're worried about the quarterly thing.
Yeah, I'm worried about the quarterly thing. And, the reality of that is it depends on how, from my perspective, how well you communicate it, and does the partner see something in it for them?
Yeah. Well, no, you're right. And sometimes people got freaked out. Thank you for bringing up that point. We changed margins for resellers once in that time. So that was like a really big material change. And it didn't actually go great, because we realized that, at the beginning, we gave the wrong amount and had to sort of adjust that. And so, that one sucked, but at least we could correct it quickly. By the way, that's the first time anybody's used the word "sucked" on our podcast. So I'm gonna leave that in there. But I want to say, Darren, thank you. I'm gonna ring a bell. We're making it real.
We're making it real, but it did.
Bringing it to ground level, bringing it to the people. Yeah,
it did.
You can't change stuff like that very often. So, but again, it gave us the chance to make a change, kind of on the fly, because we were building this thing. I can't tell you is. Another visual would be the spinning plates, right? I mean, you got this thing going over here on, partner enablement, and you're working on that. And then, this plate over here around kind of reseller discipline and margins, and, the things they have to do is falling. And you'd go over here to the portal needs work, and you're spinning that plate. So, having quarterly program guides allowed us to be flexible and get stuff in there and iterate, right? Like the December 2016 program guide is that was one of the first that we got out formally. I mean, it's a joke compared to where we were, in this December of 2020 and the like. So we just made such fantastic progress, but most of the updates were informational, more resources, more helpful, more clarity. Hey, there's an extra reseller situation that we wanted to address, stuff like that.
And I think that goes well into your third point about building the partner support side. And by the way, having been a former partner, if there's something in it for me, I'll answer a question. I'll pay attention to something as long as I know that there's something in it for me. If that iteration is making it clearer and better, I think partners are all in. What they hate is change for change's sake, or change finance department. It's going to make the finance department happy, but it's going to send my world sideways, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, finance.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think, and a lot of that is communication. A huge part is how you communicate it, which is why I think you need a strong partner support team, which is your number 3.
Yeah, I mean, the direct correlation is having the right data and the right contacts to make sure you're updating the right people. And we built out 2 partner support teams, but both were really helping us keep on top of our contacts, our data, things like that. So, one partner support team was our partner service advisors, and that was almost a straight ripoff of SAP's partner service advisors. Based on the name, it is a complete ripoff. And we had them doing largely the same things, right? People, partners need a human to call. And so we had these kind of more junior employees, sort of SDR, MDR level. So sales development rep, market development rep. That's actually who we recruited from. So we also had a good, nice recruiting pool. And they were kind of the face to any partner who wanted, if they were a managed partner, they might just need a quick response on how do I get this resource, how to get on the portal, da, 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 da. But for a lot of partners, this was their go-to, right? I mean, we were scaling into, a lot of partners. And so this was a team of half dozen or so people who were just able to answer partners, have phone calls with partners. Before that team, you know what it was? Finding me on LinkedIn and like, Darren, I couldn't find anyone else. I remember our head of all support at DocuSign was like, Darren, I'm getting attacked at the conferences that we do by partners who have no one to talk to. So right. The other thing with that is it's cost effective. I mean, you can get, a couple people who are partners, service advisors for kind of one mature, expensive partner account manager, right? So it's scaled nicely.
Right.
The second team was what I called partner program operations. Okay. So we had a partner operations team and revenue operations, and they handled kind of orders and that kind of stuff. But I needed a program operations team and a cost-effective one. So we went out to the Philippines. Our support organization was working with a company there, and our first line support as a company was coming out of the Philippines. And so one of my team members came from Dale. He came from support, knew this, and he's like, Darren, why don't we get a handful of people in the Philippines? Again, very affordable on a, Bay Area basis. Yeah, you get a lot of people, right? And so that team started helping us publish the documents, making sure, all of the steps were there, helped us get our data in order. They were just cleaning up. They're just constantly, cleaning up our data over time. And once you have cleaner data, you can, you just can run so many more things and you could be better. So those were the 2 kind of teams we had: partner service advisors to take the first line questions from partners and they could talk to them. And then we kind of on the back office side had this partner program operations team. They were offshore. They weren't full-time employees. And they just helped us improve our data and improve all those sorts of things just to run the programs.
Yeah. And as you scale, I think as you're talking about run those programs, I think the other thing, and your next one ties into it well, is you're going to run into direct sales at some point and you have to align with them. And your fourth point is harmonizing with direct sales, right? Which is it's a big issue. I remember Pete Koliopoulos did a really interesting but controversial presentation back about 2 years ago. And he went to the point of saying, why don't you trust your partners like you trust your direct sales? Because you'll tell your direct sales your weaknesses and your strengths. Why do you only tell your partners your strengths and you don't really trust them? But I think it just reiterated to me how important it is to get that all aligned. Yeah.
I love Pete. I haven't seen him since that presentation. Sort of strange. Was very controversial.
So maybe that was it, right? Maybe after Pete made that presentation, I was like, we're not going to have you back again. I haven't seen him in 2 years either. So Pete, if you're listening, but
I haven't. Yeah, you should bring him back on to talk about that. I mean, that alone is worthy of a podcast or 10, right? To go over kind of how to work with direct sales. I will say at DocuSign, it was hard. It was hard. Most business application centric companies start as direct sellers, right? They really do. If you think about SAP, Oracle applications and the like, those companies all started with very much direct sales. And so there was a culture that we were trying to break through. And so there was quite a few things that we tried to do around harmonizing with direct sales, number 4 on the list. We were just, had a North Star of trying to make it easy for our sellers to work with our partners, right? Because if they're coming from this area where they're not always sure if they need them, or when they do need them, they sort of take them for granted. And, they're just trained to like get and eat those deals on their own. So our North Star is making it easy for our partners to work with our sellers and vice versa. So we actually, after a lot of hard work, were able to implement compensation neutrality. And that was on the reseller side. So originally, the sellers only got the net of what was sold out there. So if there was a big discount going to a reseller, they only got the net. So they looked at it and said, well, wait a second, if I can get 100% of the deal, or I only get X percent, that sucks. Sorry for my language.
Second time. That's two times.
So, I mean, and that helped a ton. That just really brought them back in and really rescued some partnerships in that by allowing the sellers to have comp neutrality. Another one you don't often think of is implementation services neutrality, right? So we had a situation where the sellers are like, I'd kind of like to work with that partner from a services capacity, but I actually get paid on selling our own pro services. So I lose out if the partner does the pro serve. Like, oh God, we got to go fix that one too, right? So, you just try to make it as neutral as possible, and wherever possible, incent them to work through these good partners where it makes sense. The other things we did was just some hand holding. So we had a role in the sales org called partner development reps. We had sales, market, and we had partner development reps, right? PDRs. And they would kind of guide through our AEs on these deals. Because some of them, I used to run the Discovering DocuSign every month doing the partner spiel. There was 100 new people in the room every month, most of them sellers. There was always people coming on, having to learn how to work with partners. So these PDRs were able to do that. And then I had my own partner services advisor team be a sort of a concierge for those sellers. So we just tried to make it easy to work with the partners, make sure they were getting paid correctly, and handhold them along the way.
Look, you just made compensation neutrality sound really easy.
It's not.
It's not by far. It is absolutely the key to success. And at the end, we'll talk about how people can get in touch with you to talk about that. Because not only in selling the software, but now, as you said, when you get to the services side and you've got that implementation team, and I'm guessing you may be dealing with two different lines in an organization. One's maybe operational lines. They're all about revenue, but you're having to track down multiple units to get them all in line. That's some work to get that done.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. And moving on to the fifth one, final one. And I had to.
You like this one?
I love this one. I got to tell the audience, I literally went through but Darren sent me some slides to go through in the beginning, and I was looking at them. I went through the 4, and I was like, this all lines up really well for automation. I think number 5 should be automated.
Did you nail it? Did you guess ahead?
You nailed it, right? I was like, oh my gosh, it's automated. And just to share, right? I live in an automation world. 360 is incentive automation, and we absolutely believe that's the way to go.
Yeah.
But so many times, Darren, we've seen people move to automation without getting those other 4 that you talked about done. Or look, maybe you can do them at the same time, but moving to automation does not solve a bad program. It just scales a bad program. I'm going to have a t-shirt that said, Claudio, Ayub, and I, who are both huge automation fans, Jay McBain said, automation is the number one thing that's going on. I've talked to both of them about, you got to get it right before you do that.
Absolutely. To use a golf analogy, right? I mean, if you hit your crappy driver, 50 yards into the woods, if you get a much better driver, you're going to hit it 100 yards into the woods.
Right.
Doesn't really help you. I mean, you could end up with some real legal issues too. You could end up automating something. You get the address wrong, you get an email address wrong, and you just, you've sent a check or something to the wrong address to the wrong person, and you can't get it back. There's just a million things that can go wrong when your data isn't in good shape. And that's why all of those previous steps really got us to, better systems. So we ended up working on, just to quickly go through kind of our priorities. I mean, when I joined, there wasn't a working partner portal. I mean, that's where we were, right? And there was some attempts or some work done, but it took a while, and we got a working portal done. In my time, we got an upgraded portal done. There was just, countless data quality projects, going into the systems work that we did. We were on Salesforce. DocuSign is a very trust and security heavy company. And so that permeated into the IT organization. We were only allowed to use Salesforce. And so we were on that platform. So we just lived and breathed like, how are we going to, collect information, and how are we going to display it through Salesforce and to our internal people, and then on the portal through Salesforce. We actually got a reseller API done to start on the marketplace work, and there's quite a bit of that going. And I hope they're continuing. I think they are. But that was some really big system stuff that had to be done. Just like huge, pulling of resources together. Got a partner directory done, got our tiered partner dashboard done. And one of the secrets here, I guess, it's not such a secret, but in the beginning, we didn't have a dedicated team for partner system. I mean, you go back, I was the only partner programs person. We didn't have a dedicated partner systems team. We had to lobby for that, have a business case. So a couple of years ago, we finally got that started. And before that, it was beg, borrowing, stealing to get resources to get some of this done, or using outside organizations and the like. So, and now maybe we're ready for your good products.
Well, look, if you're going to go through all this work to programatize everything and make everything work really well, you have this great opportunity to improve the experience. And if you don't do that well, you bring in automation and don't do that well, you're missing the opportunity to not only engage, but to personalize and all the upsides of automation.
Absolutely.
You're going to miss that. Hey, and two trends that I'm seeing too, I'm curious what you went through. One is, and I think most people are getting pretty used to this, is when they go to the automation to pull IT forward, right? And it used to be you would go and you would look for an automation system and you go through the vetting and you'd work with the business owners, you go through it, and then you pull in IT at the end. I'm seeing two things. I'm seeing IT pulled way up front to get ahead of that curve. And then also I'm seeing compliance get pulled way up front because we're seeing more and more incentives globally. Everybody's looking at doing a global, and you've got issues global when you're putting millions of dollars out there, right?
Yeah, both 100% on both of those. I think we learned our lesson early on not doing those two things. And so, and to be honest, like the audit, the compliance, all that was, a fraction of what it is today at DocuSign. So it was just easier to get those resources in the last few years versus at the beginning. But yeah, I think the great points, bring IT in early. And by the way, just a secret to success in business, if you include some of these, what you feel are adjacent teams to what you're trying to do, right? IT, the operations teams, finance, whatever. If you bring them in early and sell them on your vision, they will be so much more, motivated to help you. What we found was we would bring them in late. They're like, oh, this is a pain in the ass. What is this? I don't even understand what we're trying to do. You're just telling me what you want from me. They weren't into it. So it's like there's a human psychology there to sell them on it first. Get them excited. Hey, we're trying to do this as a team. Are you in? Are you on board? Okay, let's go meet the vendor and talk to them and the like. That really ended up working very well over time.
So I was going to ask you if you had a final thought, and that's a pretty cool one, but I'm going to add another one since you went down that road, and I think you covered that well. What about the C-suite? What about selling through this whole organization about this investment? And your last thought, any which way you want to go, but I always find that an interesting topic. And, how do we sell up across all of this and justify it all?
It's not easy to do well. It's not easy to get done. I mean, we definitely had pushback on everything. DocuSign was a business case focused company, right? You wanted to do something, you had to do a business case. Part of the issue with that is they take forever, right? To get all the data together perfectly. You might be dealing with executives who had partner experience or had direct experience who may not kind of get it intuitively. And so, it's a lot of pushes of the flywheel in the same direction and just kind of keep repeating some of these things. And, sometimes things took a lot longer than I wanted or we wanted in the partner group. But, as a final thought, I mean, we as a partner team, and I would say the order to chaos mantra helped a ton. We tripled the percentage of contribution from partners at DocuSign over the 5 years I was there. While the company revenue more than tripled, right? So it was just like a massive amount of growth for the partner organization and the impact the partners had. And, so it did get through to the C-suite. It was working, but any individual conversation could be very difficult. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Once again, I think that goes all the way back to what you were talking about with the IT, with the compliance, with the C-suite. Get in early, bring them forward. We still have organizations come to us that want to do automated, and they're coming to us and it's interesting, getting us to help them build the case for the C-suite. And I think that's actually pretty cool that they're going to talk to us and try to figure out, how to get their package really well put together. And, in transparency at 360, that lengthens the sales cycle if they're going to buy automation. But we're wholeheartedly into that. How can we help them pull everyone forward? And I think any organization out there that is in the incentive space or in the automation space needs to be willing to go in, look, how do we help you position this right? I think that's part of what we should be doing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, making compelling business cases in those presentations that you can make an impact, quickly in some of these big executive meetings where you don't have much time. It's critical to get your speaking points right and to have that, background of the data and the business case and what happens if we don't do it. So that was something I got fairly good at by the end. It was hard. It's not easy. And I'm glad to hear you're helping other companies with that for your kind of stuff. I'd be happy to talk to anyone about my experiences. I mean, like you said, comp neutrality. Wow, what a business case that was to put together and a lot of work, and getting a systems team and getting all this stuff done. Looking back, I feel immensely proud of what we were able to do. Absolutely.
Well, look, thank you for joining us today, Darren. What's the best way for people to get connected with you?
Find me on LinkedIn, Darren Bibby. So Bibby. I think that's the best way. And like I said, I'm doing a little bit of consulting and business stuff these days, and a lot of, let's call it, we moved back to Canada from the Bay Area, and so doing a lot of, every day's like Saturday. It's just chores and working on the house and a 25-year long to-do list that I've put off for all those years.
Well, nice. I really appreciate you joining us. Offered a lot of information. It's a great list. Very much appreciated. So listeners, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for taking your valuable time to listen in. If you have any ideas for future shows, you want to comment or connect with us, please feel free to email us at channeledge@360insights.com. Also, if you enjoyed the show, please share with your colleagues, download and share. And remember, subscribe using your favorite podcast platforms, iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Google Play, Spotify, wherever you get your great content. Once again, thanks, Darren. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thanks for listening to Channel Edge, brought to you by 360 Insights, the channel success platform. Subscribe now on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and Google Play, and you'll always be the first to access new episodes where channel leaders share success strategies, best practices, and emerging trends. For bookings, feedback, questions, or comments, feel free to email us at channeledge@360insights.com.